So welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. Today we're going to be talking about a very practical application of AI, one that can transform the way you offer value to your clients in your business, and also how much easier you can make it for them to get results using your tools, your methodology, your know-how to achieve the promises that you give them. My name is Darren Ball. I'm a venture lead here at Rocker. I spend my time helping startups, corporates, venture builders to design, bring to market, and raise money for new digital products. And today what I'm sharing is something that we've been working on recently, focused on a specific area where we think that AI can make a massive difference to business. Now, this is Aaron Levy. He is the CEO of Box, and he says here that if you're currently providing a service, either consulting, coaching, or research, even implementation, that your biggest opportunity is not to use AI to do your job faster, it's to turn your expertise into an AI workflow. And I think that quote captures a shift that's about to redefine every single service business. In my view, this is the future of coaching and consulting. Many coaches and consultants built powerful frameworks, methods, intellectual property of different kinds over the years of their work with clients. Even we have done the same. But the old model, the high-touch sessions, the PDF toolkits, etc., whatever it is that you're using to facilitate that engagement right now, doesn't really scale in a world where clients increasingly expect instant results. The next wave of growth for expert business is not more sessions. It's productized expertise powered by AI, and that's what Aaron Levy is talking about here. So the question is really, how could you, and also how could you transform your IP, so your methodology, your frameworks, your domain knowledge, into AI-led systems to facilitate that human-AI collaboration that helps your clients to achieve better results. So let's start by talking about what the opportunity is here, what's happening today in the market. And this applies to any sort of domain expert, as we said, consultant, coaches, expert teachers, agencies, etc., anyone who has a codified process that gets results for clients today. So if you are one of those people, then you developed a deep domain knowledge and proven methods that already work, right? You're already getting results, and you may sell it in a DIY way, in a done with you way, in a done for you way, whether that's courses or programs or services. But at the end of the day, you, or at least your team, is the bottleneck, and results depend on your time or your client's ability to follow instructions successfully. So the expertise is powerful, but it doesn't scale, and that's what we call the trap of expertise that we've got there. Now, AI changes that, of course, because it lets your methodology do the work. The AI era that we're now is flattening all of these cost structures and creating what we call knowledge leverage or IP leverage. So consulting, coaching, services in general are being codified as workflows that AI can run or assist. Let's take a next step and let's look at the three different stages of turning your method into a scalable product to help bring this to life a little bit in terms of what we really mean. So the first stage here is what most people are doing right now. Okay, it's the mainstream. It's the human process and knowledge. In a lot of cases, this is the scenario in which IP lives in your head and your documents and the coaching calls that you may do, or the consulting time that you may offer your client, and the delivery is very high touch, manual, perhaps even unique a lot of the time. So in this scenario, growth comes from either more hours or more hires, and clients might love your insight, but they struggle with implementation. So we're talking about a situation in which you've already built the intellectual property. You've got the frameworks, you've got the checklists, or you've got the step-by-step systems that people consistently can follow to produce results. In this case, basically, you've codified the what to do, but not the how it gets done. And people struggle with the execution, and your own capacity limits your growth. Okay, you can think of an example in which maybe a marketing strategist, they've got a 7-step launch system or something like that, and they may offer it as a coach or a program, and it works, but people often get stuck halfway because it's complex or time intensive for them to do, and often a lot of people don't finish it, and they don't get the result or the promise that you offered them in the beginning and what they bought. Okay, let's go to the next point, the next stage. Now, in this next stage, I'd like to first talk about the gentleman called Naveen Chadha. He is the managing director of a 55-year-old Silicon Valley venture firm called Mayfield, and he has a lot to say about this particular transition, the shift that we're talking about at the moment. One of the things he highlights in particular is the coming shift away from time-based or per-seat billing to outcome-based pricing that will take place in service-based businesses. And we're starting to see the shift from selling time or access to selling outcomes and software-enabled transformation, which is without a doubt the future of consulting and services. And what's particularly interesting about the Mayfield thesis is their focus on AI teammates. And the way that they explain it, an AI teammate is basically a digital companion that collaborates with a human on shared goals to achieve better outcomes. The technology could be built on, agentic technology, or co-pilots, and the aim is not to replace people. The aim is to team up and collaborate together, which is very important in the context of what we're talking about today. Because when we're talking about the transformation of coaching, consulting, or service-based businesses, we're talking about how AI can be used in collaboration with people rather than replacing people entirely, right? This is not hollowing out your service. This is about enhancing your service to deliver a more powerful outcome. So with that in mind, let's go to the second stage and look at what early adopters are doing. So in this case, we've got a situation in which there is a semi-automated process that's coming into play, or a semi-automated workflow. You're beginning to productize the method. We're making progress towards the vision of the future, but it's not quite the future yet. So in this case, in this example, what's starting to happen is you're identifying repeatable parts of your process that could be structured as a logic or prompts or decision trees. It's semi-guided, right? You embed automation or AI assistance into the process in some way to help your clients to apply the method faster, more accurately. And you might use no-code tools or custom GPTs that you build, or even little workflow builders and NA10 or the OpenAI agent builder, for example, to begin to turn your IP into digital guided experiences. And you're still in the loop, right? You're reviewing, you're coaching, you're customizing, but at least you're not doing every step manually anymore. And the value that you begin to unlock here is that clients are beginning to get better results because they don't stall and they don't make as many errors as they did in the first place when they used to follow your system completely manually. And you can also serve more people without adding more team members. And your program and its results become more consistent, more measurable, and more data-driven. And you could start to see the possibility in this case from shifting from selling time or access to selling outcomes, right? Like we talked about with the Vincit example. So if we go back to our example of the strategic marketer who had that 7-step launch system, right? It could be, in this case, that same person could begin to build an AI workflow that takes a client's inputs, which may be about their niche, might be about their offer, their audience, and any other useful input data that they have, and then starts to generate a messaging plan and a content calendar, right? Maybe automating what would otherwise be 60% of the thinking work that would be involved in creating it if someone had to do this manually following your method. And which might be the steps that clients actually used to struggle with, because it is the more difficult and difficult to teach aspect of what you offer. So it's part human, part AI flow. That's what we're getting to in this second stage. Now, what about the third stage? Now, this third stage is really where innovators are beginning to play, right? We're talking about AI-first products, scalable systems. And what this looks like is basically your proprietary method is now living inside of an intelligent system. So you've got an AI that applies your expertise autonomously or semi-autonomously, right? And clients are interacting with your process now through an app, through a platform, or through some agent that coaches, that generates, or that executes in real time for them. And every interaction is actually feeding data back, improving the model and your results and the future results that your client is able to get. In this scenario, you go from being the bottleneck operator to becoming the curator and continuous improver of a system, right? You're an architect now. And you're no longer selling time, you're beginning to license your IP as a product. So you've turned what used to be a service-based business into an asset and a venture that can actually scale globally. And what's extremely interesting about this are the massive implications for the business model as well, as Naveen was beginning to hint at there, and which Aaron Levy also talks about. And this is beginning to disrupt the kind of per-seat model that we see with a lot of SaaS-based business, and also the subscription or per-user type of model, and a lot of the time-based or access-based pricing that a lot of consulting or service-based businesses use today. Why? Because you can start to charge more specifically for the work done. So instead of a user paying for the potential output, right, companies can actually pay for the actual work that is performed by the agents. And this type of model is a much more direct and accurate way of monetizing AI-powered solutions. There's also much better alignment with business value, because this outcome-based pricing ties the cost of whatever software that they're using, that you have built to offer to them, right, directly to the measurable results that it can help them to achieve. For example, when you look at FinAI, which is a customer service solution, they don't charge a per-seat fee, because that wouldn't make sense at all, because it's the agent doing most of the work. What they charge for is per resolution. They charge 99 cents per resolution, right? So aligns the revenue that you're generating in your business with the success that the client is experiencing on their side. And what's interesting about this is the blending of a tech-based business with a service-based business and the types of margins that you can achieve as a part of it. If 80% of the work can be done with AI, you can have an 80 to 90% gross margin, right? Humans can still have a 30 to 40% margin. So you can have a blended margin that's 60 to 70% and still produce 20 to 30% net income at a much larger scale than you're doing right now, which is what makes it so interesting. So that same strategist that we've been talking about, that marketing strategist, that in the first instance they had the 7-step plan, the course, the program that someone had to follow manually, which in the second instance was becoming a process that had a greater degree of automation involved, so that there was less thinking or learning that the client has to do. In this case, you could have launch GPT, for example, like a self-serve AI coach, an AI teammate in the sense that Naveen was talking about, that is trained on your methodology, that guides users from idea to campaign execution. And you could charge in a completely different way for this. You could be charging per campaign even, which aligns with the business value that's being created for the client. So let's talk about why this matters, which are essentially these 4 points that we've started to pick out as we look through these examples and this journey from the human-based process to the semi-automated to the AI-first workflow. But first of all, you've got the scalability. Once the process is modeled and it can serve 100 times more clients, you can do it without the 100 times more people. So you go from a situation in which you had limited capacity to one in which you have scalable delivery to one in which you have exponential growth possibilities, right? That's a completely different type of business that you're talking about there. From a margin standpoint, you're replacing all these low-value manual steps with automation while you preserve the premium advisory value that you provide because of your deep domain knowledge and expertise, right? You can experience this massive increase in margin from 30 to 40% to much higher, maybe 60 to 70% because of this blend with the technology delivery that you can achieve with AI. Third, you've got the defensibility, right? So you've now taken your proprietary frameworks and they become productized IP rather than just slides or PDFs or coaching calls, where it's very difficult for people to get any of the value out of them after the fact. And what's more is that your data and the continuous use of your product reinforces the value of the product over time as you begin to integrate this learning back into it. And the last thing you got is the speed, right? As more and more clients begin to demand instantaneous results, you've got these AI-based workflows now that can cut the cycle time down from weeks that you used to take for delivery down to minutes, right? Even in a hybrid model. And this new speed advantage is an advantage in every industry. So we know what's possible now, but there's still the challenge that we face in actually making this a reality in our business. And we often see these 3 things that we've highlighted here. The first is obviously that people don't know where to start exactly. They might be using AI as a helper, in terms of chatbots or doing a little bit of the copywriting or whatnot, but they're not really using it to re-engineer their service model, which is what we are talking about here. The third thing is they don't have a structured innovation process, so it's a little bit kind of hit and miss in terms of getting results in terms of a product that you're actually building. People may jump straight into building a tool without really validating the solution that they're proposing. The most important of which is the value exchange, which the third point here, which a lot of people misjudge. Because automating a service doesn't automatically make it a product that people want. There are obviously trade-offs involved in automating something. For example, people often think that if they automate their service, that people will pay for access at the same level as they did before. But it's often not true unless you completely reimagine the value exchange that's happening to ensure that people are still getting a transformation that they are willing to pay for at a level that works for you and your business. So often when things are automated, the perceived value of that output falls considerably. And automation may create efficiency and it may remove friction, but it can also remove certainty, it can remove confidence, it can remove accountability in the outcome that client was paying for in the first place. So we need to think about what is the new value exchange, which will be what people will pay for. Because at the end of the day, it's always about the outcome, right? And we need to think about what is the outcome that we're still able to deliver, which gives people that certainty, that confidence and accountability, which they were receiving in the first place. So those are just some nuances in terms of the challenges. Let me talk about the way that we approach this problem with our AI-first venture design process. So very quickly here's a lightning fast summary of how we go about doing this. Now, the first step, as you know from watching many of our other webinars, is what we call the who outcome struggle. And this is all about identifying the problem, right? What is it that people struggle with? Now, if you already have an existing business, you probably you already know this, right? Because you are solving this for them today. But what's useful about this is getting everything down into a black and white process so that you can identify where your expertise actually delivers unique value, and you can identify what we call your AI leverage point, right? So, for example, in some types of consulting, the actual data synthesis and the framing of insights, that probably takes 80% of the time, but only about 20% of the creativity or the actual thinking effort, right? That kind of thing is ideal for automation. So you want to look through what we call the job map, the steps that you have to follow in order to get results for your clients. And you want to begin to identify where do you have leverage, where you can begin to use these AI tools in order to create a hybrid model between AI, automation, and yourself. Next point. The step 2 is called the red button design. This is all about designing the value proposition based on data, right? The core insight here is to imagine the red button, right? That's the perfect AI that solves your client's problems instantly and flawlessly, okay? Now that is a vision of the future, and no product that you're going to build tomorrow is going to be able to achieve that. But what we do is we work backwards from that to design an MVP workflow that moves meaningfully towards that ideal vision of the future that we have in our mind. And what we do to help us to get there is to benchmark any of our competitors to see how they are productizing their service, and how are they delivering that outcome, and how can we do it better, faster, and cheaper than they're doing it today. Okay, so that's the second thing. The third thing is what we call the test wall, and this is all about validation. It's about testing the comprehension, the appeal, the pricing with real prospects, the real people from your community and your client base before you actually build, right? And a key part of this is validating the new value exchange that you will be offering in this AI workflow version of your service or consulting offer, right? So there are many ways that you can do this. Sometimes we just do this conceptually. That's the fastest way. Just describing to people the value that we're going to offer and exploring the price point that they'd be willing to pay for that, right? And you can move from a low fidelity version like that all the way to a high fidelity version by building even a prototype working version of your AI workflow, so that people can begin to experience the kind of output or the value that they may get, right? So we do that, first of all, at a conceptual level, and we iterate until the target market is scoring the value prop, i.e. the value exchange, a 10 out of 10 in terms of both clarity and appeal. And that is an important step forward before we invest a lot of time in trying to build something, to ensure that we're focused on building the right thing. Because as easy it is to build products today using AI-enabled IDEs or even vibe coding tools, you still want to make sure that you're actually working on the right problems and building a solution that you already know is going to resonate with your end user. Let me talk about point number 4. So point 4 is about the master plan, right? We call it our roadmap. This is also about the go-to-market. And the key here is that what we call the now, next, future, right? What do we automate first? What are we going to defer? How is the business model going to evolve as we continue to develop from a point of semi-automation to an AI-first workflow, right? We have a vision of the future. We want to make sure we're ultra-focused on what we want to build now so that we ship and get something to market that people can start to use, that we can start to charge for, and that we can start to get feedback on, which will help us to evolve towards our vision of the future. We also look at something called the 4 fits. And the 4 fits is about moving beyond product market fit to acknowledge the importance of designing a product to take advantage of a channel and making sure that you can actually afford to use that channel and make money with your product based on the business model that you have in place, right? So this is all about ensuring, number one, that what you're building is commercially viable, and number two, that you have a way that it can scale, even if that means beyond your existing client base and community, if you want to grow beyond that into something that has much larger user-based potential. And then what we also do as a part of this is that we design what we call the game thinking loop, right? This is how you drive adoption, engagement, and retention in the product. These are core product design principles that many people who just jump into building a tool sort of forget, if they even know about it at all. These are core ideas that are at the heart of something called game thinking, different from gamification, but game thinking, which is all about giving your users a sense of mastery, purpose, and progress, and it's at the heart of some of the very best products that are built today. Let me take you to step 5. So in step 5, we have what we call the traction roadmap, right? This is about building a small-scale AI workflow pilot with real users, right? So you're testing it with a subset, with a segment of your existing client base and community, and you're measuring important things like activation, like retention, and you're using this qualitative and quantitative data to iterate the product in real time, right? So once you actually get early signs of product market fit, then you're in a position to start moving into bigger groups of users and starting to scale your audience and your product, even into a standalone product venture if you wanted to, outside of your existing business. The point here, though, is that we're thinking consciously and deliberately and strategically about our first 100 customers and the roadmap that we want to follow to get there. What are the KPIs, what are the gates, what are the milestones that we need to follow in order to make sure that we're moving forward in a positive way. Those are 5 steps in the process. Those ensure that you get to the heart of the value exchange problem, that you know that you're building something that people actually want to use and pay for, and that you have a structured process to follow to ensure that you stay on track with evidence of real traction and product market fit throughout the process. And that's what we do here at Rocker. So if you've already built a method that delivers results, this is the time to productize it, right? Let's turn your process into a real product. Again, we help domain experts design, validate, launch AI-first versions of their expertise. So if you'd like to get started, I invite you to book a 60-minute venture design session to explore how your IP could become a product and how you can make this AI advantage a part of your business too. So I'm here for any questions or comments that you guys have. This is extremely exciting topic for me, and I'd be delighted to talk more about what it means, or what the potential for it means for your business. Thanks.